All right, we're back with the Morning Crossfire right here on the nation's number one talk station, 99.3 Nigerian Farm. Kofi Bartels. We're still looking at the recently concluded, or conducted rather, off-cycle, off-season governorship elections in Imo, Bayelsa and Kogi states. And we've been talking about it from the get-go this morning, right from the lead, the 5 o'clock hour, right up to the paper review. We call it dailies today from 6, and then of course 7:30 when Sheriff Quadri came in to the studio. Right now we'll be doing some more talking about those elections because it's the biggest story we have of the day, and we have to kick things off right with that. We have an election observer with us on the line. I love election observers, because apart from the media, they are the ones who also put their neck on the line to cover elections. We cover elections, but they also do a lot of taking of risk to cover elections. I'd like to introduce our guest this morning. She's of the organization known as Kimpact Development Initiative. I hope I got that right. And she is program officer with Kimpact Development Initiative, Uwaila Omosigbo. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the Crossfire.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. How is Imo State this morning?
Imo State is amazing. Where there is no electricity in Imo State, that is what for sure. There has been strike in the state, so there is power blackout, and people have to run generators all through. It's been, I think today is the 20th day they have been power in Imo State.
So we have the people in court. Never have enough petrol from where you.
There's been challenge of the people also even affect the elections. Considering the elections expect that these will affect the case.
First, let's talk indeed. What first thing you call 79993 is number to call very clear you contribution 9393 Fields can call 0145 190 01657 and we'll be very glad to hear from you. WhatsApp 597580505 and of course S on Facebook and info. What also saying announced result at the King Governor with Plan 27 local and what was the you this organization in Imo State on Saturday?
Okay, Imo State on Saturday, like you already mentioned, witnessed an off-cycle election. One thing that was crucial, or one thing that we noticed, however, KDI conducts pre-election environment assessment. So what we do is, when we conduct this pre-election security environment monitoring, we're able to produce reports that we use to engage stakeholders, including security officials, and other critical stakeholders to enable them strategically deploy, for the elections to mitigate violence and also improve the electoral process. So one thing that stood out for us was the domineering and the suppressed media space in the state. Throughout the state, of yours during, what happens during elections, campaigning, posters of different political parties, that was not visible in Imo State. It has not been seen. It has been one political party, dominating the media space. And the reports that we're getting from the field was not commensurate with the reports of the media. So that made us to believe that the media space was suppressed. However, happenings in the state, hate speeches, and because, the state already had a history of violence, there were already secessionist activities in the state, there were already destruction, there are reports of political party clashes, hate speeches, in the state, kidnappings and what have you. So that further intensified, the level of violence in the state during the elections. So to the build-up of elections, electoral violence kept building up, it kept increasing, and that made the state and that put the state in a polarized situation, during the election. So on the election day, that affected the turnout of voters. Actually, it affected the turnout of voters. So there was various projections that there was going to be violence if, security officials did not strategically deploy, to address these security concerns. So there were already issues, there was tension, there was political tension in the state. There was heavy presence, of the security, of the military, of the police. You had the DSS, there was heavy presence, and they were there, to address the polarized situation, political tension in the state. So they were there on that day, do that. However, their heavy presence, it could mean two things. They are there to protect the citizens, but seeing a lot of armed security men like that could also have a negative impact. People might begin to fear that it means that the election is going to be, very violent, and that might discourage people from coming out. So that actually affected the turnout, and the political environment was volatile, as at the time was tense. However, the security agents were on ground. They even had a press briefing with the civil society organizations. KDI was presented there, Kimpact Development Initiative was presented there with the media, and they promised that they were going to use information, the report that they got from civil society. KDI, we had an election security meeting with them to provide for the election security environment monitoring report I mentioned. We produced those reports to them, and they used it to deploy strategically during the elections.
That's fantastic. I know you also had your election media security town hall, something in Abuja.
Yes.
So some of that report is what they use. That is quite interesting that the police were able to use your report to know what the flashpoints and all that. The report, which I saw some of it on TV. So you're saying that how did it turn out? Based on your analysis, your research before the election, pre-election research, what you've discovered was that the political climate in Imo was very tense. You had the political actors using some sort of violent rhetoric and hate speech and all that during the election. Also, you said media space was restricted because what you heard in the media and what you saw on ground were different. And you also said you didn't see too many posters of opposition candidates, but you mostly saw the governor's posters. We heard that there was a sort of a price placed on billboards. Government, it was quite expensive. Can you tell us something about that, please?
Yes. Okay. So, what we got information that sometimes government make laws that could be restricted. It's an indirect way of suppressing the opposition. So that's why we didn't see, even apart from Imo State, even in Kogi State and even in Bayelsa, that also happened, but it was more in Kogi and Bayelsa. You had the case of 52 million or about 53 million, around that range, for you to, put up posters. That amount is outrageous. But however, we saw people endorsement. There were a lot of endorsements in Imo State. That was really peculiar and stood out. A lot of groups, a lot of, you see a lot of coalitions, a group of people, coming out to endorse the governor, for the seats for everyone. Even most of those posters that we saw across the state were being put there by different people. In solidarity with the governor to campaign for the governor. However, what we cannot ascertain at this time is if those people actually paid the monies, the amount that was placed on, posting the banners of political candidates. That we cannot verify. And even on the issue of media, again, hate speeches that you mentioned, there was a viral video. There was a video that went viral of the PDP candidate in Imo State, Samaya, saying he was no longer part of the gubernatorial race. However, it was a fake video.
Okay.
The PDP, the party came up to debunk it and said it was not true, that it was a fake video, and it go or spreading that information, spreading that video. But there is no proof that he did, because the APC also came out to deny that they produced and distributed that video. So there was that back and forth, accusations online, dominating the media space, attacks, and what have you, by politicians and their loyalists.
Okay, so talking about that and also talking about the heavy military presence and the tense atmosphere on election day, would you agree that say that the turnout was quite low from what you observed?
Yes, there was a low turnout in Imo State. One would expect the people. Nigerians are patriotic people. Nigerians, for those that even came out, I want to applaud their tenacity and their patriotism for coming out. However, some people did not come out, and this is not related to the distrust that already exists between INEC and the people. Like, a few months ago in February, we conducted the general elections, and, there were a lot of reservations by a lot of people and different groups saying that their interests were not being captured, that INEC did not reflect the will of the people. However, INEC has that issue yet to resolve. I did notice there was also in some areas, there were reports that were coming up of pre-filled sheets. Right? People were saying, elections did not hold in certain local governments, and they were pre-filled sheets. There were those reports circulating. And although INEC had come out to say they were going to address those issues were not ready announced before INEC came out to announce the result. Now, this distrust further affects the citizens. So it created lower voter turnout. People didn't want to come out because they didn't believe that, their votes will count. And disenfranchisement too also occurred because some people didn't start. Election relatively started across the 3 states early, except for Imo. Imo started a bit late. It was about around 9:20 to 9:30. That was when it commenced. And even across polling unit centers, you notice that there was low voter turnout.
Okay. So you're saying pre-election, so results sheets were pre-filled. That's the allegation made by some politicians. From your men and women on the ground, when the results were being filled, but before we get to that, even did you notice anything like that? Anyway, let me put it this way: when the results sheets were, if they are pre-filled, is it that they bring this election or this result sheets to the polling unit, or it just goes straight to INEC? I mean, how does it work? What's the allegation? What's the modus operandi of this whole pre-filled result sheet thing?
Okay, when people do not, when there's low voter turnout, it also has implications. When people do not come out to cast their votes and to exercise their rights in choosing their candidates, it also can become a play field for politicians. It also provides an opportunity for politicians to take advantage of that, to carry out devious activities. You understand? So now, when there were not people there to even interfere or even question INEC, for example, when they did not come out, of course, it provided them. They had a field day. They were able to. I'm not accusing INEC. I am saying from the information that we have, there was no connection between the people and INEC and the security officials. So what we have are videos circulating, and of course, the issue of issues that are sensitive as vote buying and like this previous we are talking about is actually systematic. You understand? It is difficult to actually produce real evidence because, of course, when you are observing the field, you have to also be careful. You have to be safe and be careful, and you might not be able to obtain enough data and evidence that you need, to present to the relevant stakeholders or the people that can act on it. So the circulation of those videos and those pre-filled sheet information, I expected that INEC should have addressed those issues because of the trust deficit that is already existent in the electoral process. I expect INEC to have addressed those issues to ensure that nobody is disenfranchised. You understand? Because they had a lot of officials on ground that could have that provide reports to them. We had security agents that were there. We had the DSS. You even see another key thing that happened was some DSS were on the field and they had weapons. Okay, so they could have easily interfered if they wanted to. When we get to that, we are going to talk about how security impacted the election. Maybe as we go further, I expect that we'll talk about that.
So let's delve into that because of time. Tell us how you think how security impacted elections on election day.
Okay, it had a positive. Okay, I believe it had a positive, and a negative impact. On the election day, KDI recorded 49 cases of electoral violence. 49 cases of electoral violence. We had 17 cases in Bayelsa. We had 19 cases in Imo and 14 cases in Kogi. Now in Imo State, there were 60 total electoral violence victims that were recorded. Okay, and the perpetrators of this violence were security agents. They constituted about 13% of the perpetrators of the violence. The 44% was party agent, 31% was party thugs. Also, it's important to know that the involvement of security agents does not necessarily mean that it was in the negative light. They were part of the fight because they were trying to address and mitigate, electoral violence that was going on. So the presence of the security created both fear and confidence in the people. Imagine going to a polling unit to cast your vote and you are seeing, for example, about 15 policemen on ground. You are seeing the army there. You are seeing the DSS with guns. It's automatically, as an average Nigerian, considering what's been going on in this country since entrance, it creates an instant fear in you. But in another way, they were trying to, secure the environment, and encourage voters to come out en masse to vote. So it had both positive and negative impacts. However, I think the security officials really really did well. Their deployment was strategic. They were able to, in a way, restore confidence in people to come out and vote. However, unfortunately, we still have cases of violence, like I already mentioned, in different states.
Right.
We had victims, even some security agents, about 6% of them in Imo State were victims of violence. The voters, unfortunately, really? 35% of them, yes, 6% of security agents, they were victims of violence. Then 35% of voters, we have in Imo State, 35% of voters were victims, and INEC officials too. There were about 5% of the INEC officials too that were also victims, because there were agitations, party agents trying to interfere in the process. And of course, because INEC officials, like the ad hoc officials, the APOs, as is the presiding officers were on ground. And of course, they were not armed, so they were the recipients of those agitations from some political party agents.
I see. All right. Any evidence of rigging?
Okay, like I told you, the issue of rigging, vote buying is thematic. Yes, there were in some parts in Imo State, there were issues of rigging. There was domination of on certain words by political parties. There is this thing around delivering one home polling unit by some chairmen of political parties. It's like a thing of pride to say, oh, this person didn't even win his or her polling unit. So you see them intensifying for those polling units to say, I want my polling. So it's like a thing of pride. And this further intensifies contestations among political party, members. Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll go for a commercial break. We'll come back to talk some more about this thing called rigging. And what you observed as KDI across the state. I want to know which state ranked highest, and from your observation for rigging. I'm saying who or who didn't rig, but generally speaking. We'll be right back. Stay with us, please.
Are you interested in studying and working in the UK? To apply for an undergraduate, master's,
Morning Crossfire on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
All right, welcome back. Of course, we're still taking a conversation forward as far as the 2023 off-season governorship elections are concerned. By state, we were expecting results from Bayelsa State, expecting 59 wards or 59 polling units in what effectively in Imo State. They finished everything over there. Hopes of Governor of Imo State declaring all 27 local government areas. I guess this morning is from the Impact Development Initiative, which is that had elect money across the 3 states. And I'm talking about Omosigbo. Once again for your time. Uwa, got talk some more about violence and rigging. Some violence have expressed concern about that, but it's more than Imo State. Yes, Imo State results are ready as Sunday, who was won, but I also feel that there's some things between media. What?
The domain elections to date either of chains and tisring. Like I always say, either it is enough or that bound. It's difficult to read at what issues. At point, these are the elections, and the fact that INEC wants to game and deliver as fast as possible. Especially since this is not the general elections and there was enough time for us to prepare for these off-cycle elections. Now that brings the question to say, now there is distrust. You have further, intensified the distrust that already exists between the people and INEC. The delay, INEC has not been able to, yes, I know they've been trying to communicate. They've, of course, improved on their communication efforts from the previous election. They've actually improved on that. But the people are still not satisfied. Yet it's about the margin of lead. That margin of lead is about perception. That is why it is important that INEC communicate to us effectively what is going on. We don't leave the people in the dark. If Imo State that has 27 local governments has announced results, it will make you wonder what is holding Bayelsa back that has 8 local government areas only. Yes, the terrain in Bayelsa is different from the terrain in Imo. However, INEC had enough time, like I said, to prepare. So that was supposed to make up for all the difficult terrains, like the riverine area of Bayelsa could be mentioned as an issue, but INEC had enough time. And when they were told about this, how were they planning? We engaged INEC and asked them how they were planning to navigate the riverine area of Bayelsa. And they said, they were working with the Maritime Agency. They had plans in place, to address all those issues. However, INEC has not done that. And we are still waiting on the results. And the longer it takes, the more the chances for irregularities and for the people, the citizens, to continue to doubt INEC.
All right. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. We've talked a lot about Imo State. What has KDI and its observers able to report from Imo State and Kogi State and Bayelsa? Let's go Kogi State.
Okay, in Kogi State, Kogi has 21 local governments. Before the election, 6 local government areas were identified as hotspots. The Ijumu local government, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, Ogori and Amangongo. We have the Galimela, Odolu local government area. Ankpa, of course, Dekina, and Ofu. So these local government areas were identified as hotspot areas. And all local government areas too, where violence is likely to happen, so we're also, mapped out too. However, in Kogi, we see what has happened. The deaths have been recorded there in Kogi. 3 persons, I think we have 3 fatalities that have been recorded in Kogi. There were 2 parents who was down. The parents have eaten for that's another issue. In terms of violence in experience from the state, that the violence and political actors continue use
incidents of violence based on what you are tracking or what the indicators was on side.
Yes, anyone else from for the French teaching of small tones, or if you hate and provocative reaction, we also in that state. There was intimidation in harassment, this to a lot of infections, strong campaign material. Yesterday, I also witnessed violence. I asked the residents, fully treated, help in the base, mitigate violence, it helped.
All right. So, are you seeing a reduction in the incidents of violence? Because as like the police said in your town that he said these one of the state when it comes to sexual violence in Nigeria. I do see and conclude that for we had action of that violence.
Okay, first build a generation. To see us the president is getting real election like we had 2 salons of the night however, it's still has to watch people this totalitarian human relations. It's difficult to balance of respecting rights of people and election because we that we think let's to create so things and because it's powerful and it's not cost for concern. To create elections, to get efforts, you have cost to use our election. We're hoping that the election will have election pattern.
So before we start this setting by if I but future elections, I don't gather positions so you may turn this on self keep election as sectors of you know thank you the wrong more you don't need to say that he was just reflecting Mahmoud as chairman. Okay, this isn't concerned with the club. So anyone else has been written before the election. We don't have too much time, but very quickly, I mean, you at least are the most state. I nobody believes there's a election. Okay, seems can you hear me? We have time. Thank you and the whole team lead and keep up the good work they're doing and we'll the publishing of your report on the violence. Thank you very much. Right, we'll be right back after the break and the
More than just Nigeria 99.3. What's on Twitter?